Hey folks, this is Riker with a gaming news wrap-up video where we discuss the happenings of the week. This week's topics include the new rings that arrived in Diablo 4 this week being a bit of a mixed bag, Epic Games embarrassing itself in court against Google, incredible news about the World of Warcraft expansions, and more. As always, discussion timestamps can be found in the description below, but right before you skip ahead, just a quick reminder to ring that sub notification bell to be alerted to new Saturday episodes and stay up to date with gaming news highlights. But before we move on, a quick word from this video's sponsor, Omni Heroes. If you're looking for a game that combines heroic fantasy with casual strategy, then you gotta check this one out. Omni Heroes is not just any RPG. It's a journey where you become an Omni Guardian, tasked with a noble quest to rescue the captive Valkyries from the clutches of demons. And it's gotten recommendations on both the Google Play and App Store. In Omni Heroes, you summon legendary heroes, you unlock powerful synergies, and you can craft over 100 team compositions. Whether you're in the mood for a relaxed gameplay experience or you're a strategic thinker looking for a challenge, Omni Heroes has something for everyone. With 17 unique synergies and automated mechanics, you can dive in for either an intense session, or you can let your heroes earn rewards for you while you're taking a break. You can even use Quick Battle to skip fights if you want to. And Omni Heroes is gearing up for its new season, Ashen Phantom, which launches on November 17th. It's got a new storyline, and it introduces new roguelike dungeon gameplay for those who like new features in their seasons. So don't miss out. Download Omni Heroes now and claim 777 free pulls. That's right, 777 chances to summon your favorite heroes, which will get you 5 legendary heroes in your first week. So click the link below, become an Omni Guardian, and join the fight against evil. Kicking things off with some Diablo news. We had BlizzCon last week. I was in attendance. There was no news wrap-up last week, but I did post some coverage of the opening ceremony and of the Diablo announcements. But throughout this video, we'll touch upon some things that maybe weren't covered in that video, some further details that have emerged from BlizzCon interviews that have popped up over the week. And so one thing I just want to reiterate is this roadmap that was presented. Now, the November 7 patch 1.2.2, this arrived this week. This added 5 new rings into the game. Then on December 5th, we're getting patch 1.2.3. That's going to give us an enchanting preview window. It's also going to bring the Abattoir of Zir, a significantly large new piece of content that will be pinnacle content for players who have completed their season journey and reached level 100. It's said to be very challenging. December 12th, we're getting the Midwinter Blight holiday event, which will have new quests and activities. And more details on all of this can be found in my recap video over here. Then coming in late January, there's going to be Season 3, whose name is undisclosed, but that's bringing leaderboards in the form of a weekly challenge dungeon called The Gauntlet. Lots of big and exciting stuff coming to Diablo 4, more than I ever expected to come in Season 2. I thought we were done with Season 2. Season 2 already has been a much bigger season. I was underwhelmed with Season 1. Season 2 has exceeded my expectations and is continuing to do so with this continuing rollout of content. Now, one detail that came out that I didn't quite catch previously, I don't know if this was in an interview or on stage, when they were talking about the holiday event, they said this is their first big holiday event. The implication here being that there will presumably be more such events rolling out in the future. Website WCCF Tech attended a roundtable press interview during BlizzCon, where Blizzard was asked what's the most surprising thing that they've learned about player behavior. And they replied, quote, "I think the first thing is when we shipped the game, we saw the levels leading from 50 to 100 as an opportunity to continue leveling into the endgame. You might not reach 100, but it's no big deal." But Diablo 4 players were like, no, this is a very big deal. I want to reach 100. Why does it take so long? We reacted to that and said, you know what, level 100 is a goal that players are setting for themselves, and we need to make sure that that is an attainable goal. The changes to experience are the direct result of that. We also see that with build creativity. Players discover many builds that work in unexpected ways. Now, I was never someone who was pushing for it to be easier to reach level 100. I saw that original goal, that 100 is an aspirational goal. You don't need to reach 100. That's the way it was in Diablo 2. You could reach 99, sure, but you're not that much more powerful than you are at level 90. 90, low 90s is attainable, but getting to 99 is really tough. Similarly, in Path of Exile, players will tend to cap out in the low 90s. You could max out your character, but few people do it, and they don't feel bad that they don't reach there. Now, I went into Diablo 4 with that same mentality, but for whatever reason, while it works in D2 and Path of Exile, that players don't feel bad not reaching max level, it just wasn't working in Diablo 4. Again, for whatever reason, players in Diablo 4 felt like they had to reach 100, or at least a large number of players, large enough that Blizzard made this change to turn 100, level 100, into an actual goal that is attainable by players. Then, when discussing the upcoming Gauntlet leaderboard activity, the dev said, quote, "When we wind up in a situation where you are one-shotting the monsters and the monsters are one-shotting you, we end up narrowing the opportunities for skill and narrowing the use of many of our abilities, and the builds get narrower as well. We don't want to end up there." I thought this was interesting insight into the development process and how they want to balance the game. They don't want just one-shots on either side. Time to kill is an important concept in pretty much any genre of game that involves killing enemies. When the time to kill is too long, enemies feel like bullet sponges, or fights can drag out if they're not otherwise made dynamic or more interesting. If it devolves into just monsters and players wailing on each other, then that's just tedious. Consequently, if time to kill is too fast, then, well, you don't get to really use all of your fancy tools. You don't get to appreciate the complexity of combat if it's over instantly, one way or the other. In a game as complex as an ARPG, though, time to kill can be incredibly difficult to get into a right position because there are so many factors that affect it. In an FPS, it's easy. A gun does X amount of damage, players have X amount of health, they can have X amount of armor or defenses, and it's just a very simple calculus. Then, in another interview with TRG, Diablo manager Rod Ferguson said that Diablo 3 style pets may come to Diablo 4, that it's at least possible. He said, quote, "When we started out, we really wanted to establish ourselves in a very authentic way, a very grounded way. So we looked at, oh hey, what's really popular in Diablo 3? Mini pets and giant wings and all these things. And we were like, okay, if you're going into a dark gothic world in Diablo 4, and the first thing you do is go into town and everybody's running around with pets and wings, it's not gonna feel like that sort of scary Lilith has returned kind of moment." He then apparently compared the game to a TV series. How what you might do in Season 25 could be very different from what you do in Season 1. Basically, once you've already established the core of what you are, you could kind of go crazier in the later seasons. Although I wonder if jumping the shark played into this discussion. Now, in case you missed it, I also interviewed Diablo 4 game director Joe Shelley, and the topic of the cow level came up. And while he played coy about it, he did effectively say that whatever we get from how far we can currently get might be something worth holding on to. So he was alluding to the fact that we seem to be currently stuck in our progress with the secret cow level. We have, with Season 2, taken a step further than we were prior to Season 2, but it seems there's another step to take, at least one more, before the full cow level is unveiled. But again, he suggested that whatever we're able to get now from our current step might be worth holding on to for when the next step unlocks. You can check out the full interview over here. Now, a quick rehash of where we are currently with the secret cow level. There are cows throughout the world. If you kill those cows, you kill them in sufficient quantity, you will get special items to drop. Every 666th cow kill, you get either a bloody wooden shard, a musty tome, or a metallic fragment. Depending on where you kill that final cow, what region of the world will actually determine which of those three that you get. Now, when you take these three items, you purify them at the fountain in Ked Bardu, you then get a key that opens up the Forlorn Hovel. Within the Forlorn Hovel, you find more cows, and here you get a dried up stamina potion. If you drink that potion, you get some kind of a buff. Doesn't seem to do anything, but there's some little buff meter above your head. If I had to guess, it's the stamina potion that we want to hold on to. Probably because right now it does nothing, but for the next step we need to have that buff active to do whatever comes. Some people seem to think we need to hold on to the prior items. I think you really just want to stack up stamina potions. But who knows? Sound off in the comments if you have different theories. Then, in a group interview at BlizzCon, lead class designer Adam Jackson suggested that it is possible that we get the Blood Knight from Diablo Immortal to come to Diablo 4 one day. Now, the only reason I bring this up is because previously Blizzard said that the Blood Knight is not coming to Diablo 4. Now, this was interpreted in different ways, but with the context of Adam Jackson's comment now saying that theoretically there's no hurdle to bringing in the Blood Knight or any other new class from any other Diablo game, I think the takeaway here is that the Blood Knight was not a class in the works to be brought to Diablo 4. There were no plans to bring it immediately, that the 6th class is not the Blood Knight, but potentially the 7th or whatever in the future, who knows. Could be the Blood Knight, could be anything, just that the 6th class is definitely not the Blood Knight. And speaking of that 6th class, we'd also gotten a hint that we should pay attention to the teaser for the expansion Vessel of Hatred for some clues about the 6th class. And the first thing that I noticed was mention of the word Akarat. And if you put on the closed captioning, you see a reference to Zakarum prayer. Mephisto also says at the end of the trailer, there will be no salvation in the light. Now, all of this refers to a holy religion, the religion of the light, the Zakarum religion, all of this comes to a paladin type character, a crusader type character. It's one of the major, and has been one of the major religions and faiths in the world of Sanctuary for centuries to possibly millennia. That said, I do not think a paladin or a crusader is the 6th class. When talking about the expansion and talking about the new region, the jungle, they said that everything in the expansion will fit together. And a paladin in the jungle, I don't know about you folks, doesn't really feel like it fits together for me. There was, of course, the alleged leaks about the Spiritborn class. Now, so if we sort of take these two disparate ideas together, what I think we're seeing is the possibility of a class that is or has adopted the Zakarum faith in some way. Perhaps the local culture, given that the Zakarum faith, established itself within this region, Kurast and Travancore and all that. It's Vatican, right? Travancore is in this region that we're visiting in the jungle. I think what we might be seeing is that the natives of the jungle maybe adopted this religion into their own culture, and we're seeing some blend of spirits and the Zakarum faith and the faith of the light. So it will be some kind of a holy-based class, but not in the traditional sense that we're accustomed to. To use a real-world example, when Christianity came to Latin America had its own indigenous spiritual and religious beliefs, but there was a sort of blending of the cultures that resulted in, my understanding, I'm not an expert in the field, but resulted in instances where you have celebrations where Christian saints, Catholic saints, and indigenous spirits are sort of revered in the same realm. And a precedent has been set for this as well within the context of Diablo's universe, in that there are religions that blended the idea of the angels being gods. Like Tyrael, for instance, is a deity within, I believe it's the monk's religion within Sanctuary. The monk itself is a holy-based class, but it is completely different from the paladin and the crusader, from that religion entirely. So a holy class does not mean it has to be that traditional kind of paladin. Moving on, as we said before, the 5 new rings have made their way into Diablo 4 this week. These are rings that are representations of some of the fan-favorite malignant powers from Season 1. However, some of them are very powerful and others not so much. The Sorcerer, for instance, gets the absolute best ring. While it was intended to be a ring that incentivizes you to have a multi-elemental build by giving you a 15% multiplicative damage buff per element that you use, it's just really easy to stack 3 elements and get a 45% damage bonus. It's just a massive multiplicative stacking damage buff that takes the already dominating Ball Lightning Sorc and just makes it ridiculous. Pretty much any Sorc build will want to use this ring and just find a relatively easy way to stack, again, tri-elemental damage. Necro gets the next best ring. This takes the already awesome Infinimus build, turns it into Overdrive, just makes it really fun. I think that's the major difference between the Sorc ring and the Necro ring. The Sorcerer ring is super powerful. The Necro ring, it's powerful, yeah, but it's super fun as well. Then the Barb ring is probably the next best one, maybe tied with the Druid ring. The Barb ring is really good for Hoda builds. Outside of that, its usage case is a little less clear. You gotta remember that when you are adding in a unique ring, you are losing something. You're not just gaining. So you're losing a legendary aspect, and some builds benefit more from legendary aspects on rings than others. Some are just kind of filling in slots, others are dependent on certain aspects. And that takes us to the Druid. The Druid ring can be worked very easily into the Stormclaw build, for instance. In general, Druids have a bit more wiggle room with their rings and the aspects they're on. So for instance, I'm messing around with the Druid ring on my Stormclaw Druid. Because it's a very single target build, I really like the extra vacuum pull in to be able to group enemies and hit a lot of them at once. Of course, I'm combining that with a Godslayer crown for maximum vacuum pull. But then the Rogue is really the one that gets the shaft with the least useful ring. Spawning a decoy kind of for free. I mean, it's nice, it helps with survivability, but ring slots are very competitive for Rogue. Maybe if you're running hardcore, it's worth, but it just feels you're losing so much for so little. But I turn the question to you folks, what do you think of these new rings? What usage case of the Rogue ring am I not thinking of? Am I over-evaluating some of these rings? Sound off in the comments. Then lastly, I just wanted to touch upon something that wasn't really introduced with any amount of fanfare at BlizzCon, but there is a Diablo board game and a Diablo tabletop RPG in the works by Glass Cannon. It seems the board game's coming in 2024, and the tabletop RPG seems to be a little further away, but right now there's a survey that you can fill in to help steer the direction of this tabletop RPG. I am immensely hyped for this. My partner and I have all kinds of board games. We love co-op board games. And Dungeons & Dragons has been my lifelong passion. Like, if people think Diablo's my passion, Dungeons & Dragons is my life. And has been for over 20 years, 25 years even. The first thing that brought me into Dungeons & Dragons was Diablo. We were at a hobby shop. It was my first time in a hobby shop that my dad brought me there, and we saw on the shelf a Diablo 2 cover, and we grabbed it and it said Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, Diablo 2, and it was a Diablo 2 module for Dungeons & Dragons, a self-contained adventure with its own sort of rules adapted from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. And I played it, I loved it, and because I was a Diablo fan, that's why I got it. And that got me to explore Dungeons & Dragons further. So to have a custom tabletop RPG built from the ground up for Diablo, I think it's a phenomenal idea, because Dungeons & Dragons rules are good at being Dungeons & Dragons, but Diablo's a different world, a different universe, different resource expenditures, so having something custom built as opposed to just a D&D version that is, you know, Diablo skinned, I think this is a great idea, and I look forward to seeing what comes of this. I would love to, you know, we used to stream Dungeons & Dragons, I'd love to stream this module. Then moving on to some Epic Games news. The Epic versus Google antitrust trial began this week. Throughout this court case, we've had some revelations come to light about the Epic Game Store and about Google's offers to Epic. It turns out, way back in the day before Fortnite even came to the Google Play Store, that Google offered Epic $147 million to bring the game to Google Play, and Epic denied the offer. Nonetheless, in April 2020, Epic brought Fortnite to the Google Play Store regardless. However, 5 months later, it was taken down. Not by Epic, but by Google. Why? Because Epic implemented a hotfix into Fortnite that allowed players to bypass the Google Play Store and just buy stuff directly within the game. This breached their contract. You see, Fortnite's a free-to-play game, but Google's contract is any transactions in the game, we get a 30% cut. And Epic was trying to be sneaky and find a way to cut them out of that by bypassing the Play Store. I don't know how they thought they'd get away with that, but this is what prompted Epic's antitrust lawsuit against Google. Basically saying, hey, that's not fair. That's like, you're asking for a huge amount of money and there's no competition. We have no alternative but to be on the Google Play Store. Yes, technically we can make our own, technically you can download games outside of the Google Play Store. You don't have to do it through that, but that the average end user, it's far too complicated of a process that effectively if you don't launch on the Google Play Store on a mobile device, you're just on an Android device, you're just dead in the water. Now, Epic actually fought a similar war against Apple on the same basis. They took Apple to court, and they lost quite decisively in 2021. And in court, a Google attorney explained the 30% cut, everyone charges Epic that everywhere. The Nintendo Store, the Xbox Store, the Steam Store, everyone charges Epic 30%. Now, other details that have emerged throughout this trial include the fact that Google paid Activision Blizzard $360 million to bring their games to the Google Play Store in 2020, and the Play Store has been generating $12 billion in operating profit per year and carried a 70% profit margin. Meanwhile, the Epic Game Store, they only take a 12% cut, as opposed to Steam and all these other platforms that are taking 30%. They just take 12%, so the devs get to keep 88% of the profits. And it was revealed that the Epic Game Store has not turned a profit since it launched. Yes, it launched in December 2018 and has not made a single penny in profit yet. They continued to give away millions of dollars worth of games every week for free. And I'm sure plenty of you have a library of dozens of free games in your Epic Game Store that you don't play, and you literally just boot up the Epic Game Store to claim that free game every week, and it hasn't convinced you to spend any money on the Epic Game Store. And Epic was so confident in their business model and their store that they expected that by 2021, they would have scooped up 50%, a full half of PC gaming revenue. To put that into context, Valve, which is the undisputed king of distribution on PC, only has 38.5% of the market share. And they thought they were going to surpass Valve. And if you'll remember, back in September, not that long ago, Epic laid off 800 employees because they're not making money. The model is not working. Stop giving away free games and build a better product. Then moving on to some Blizzard news. We know that a couple weeks back, after the acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft finalized, that Xbox boss Phil Spencer visited Blizzard HQ. Well, journalist Jason Schreier released a piece detailing some of what he learned from Phil Spencer's visit. Through his connections, he learned that members of the WoW team, for instance, they were all busy putting together slides, things to show Phil Spencer and the Microsoft or the Xbox execs when they would come to visit the offices, and when they arrived, it turns out they actually weren't interested in talking business at all. They just wanted to meet the team. General manager of the Warcraft franchise, John Haidt, said, quote, "What they were trying to communicate to us was really wanting to get to know us. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're not coming in with a master plan. How can we help you?" It was awesome. Schreier speaks about how under Bobby Kotick, everyone was sort of browbeat down, had a generally negative view of Kotick, but Spencer, now that was bringing in some real sense of optimism throughout Blizzard. There's a general belief that they're now going to be allowed to be more autonomous. And Mike Ibarra expressed as well that he wants the team to be more like the Blizzard of old when it had greater autonomy. You see, back in 2008, Blizzard merged with Activision, and at the time, that was Blizzard's heyday. WoW was a huge success, so Blizzard was the golden goose, and Bobby Kotick is a smart businessman and he knows not to mess with the winning formula. So Blizzard remained autonomous for a while until the numbers started going down. In the late 2010s, that's when Activision started to apply pressure. Because revenue was going down, they had to start cutting costs. They had to invest instead into development. So you saw customer support getting cut. You saw esports ramping down. There was increasing pressure to just get games out quickly. This led to Blizzard president Mike Morhaime leaving in 2018, along with a number of veterans from Blizzard. But if you look at Phil Spencer's history throughout the acquisitions of Xbox and Microsoft, he's been largely hands-off. Ibarra expressed that there were a lot of times in his 2 years as Blizzard president that he's had to run things up the chain of executives all the way to Activision, and that just slowed things down tremendously. And the irony is that prior to joining Blizzard, Ibarra spent 2 decades with Microsoft, so he's familiar with them, and if he's feeling positive and optimistic about this, I think that's a very good sign. Separately though, in an interview with The Verge, Ibarra made some comments that have made some players upset. As part of a bigger interview not talking about any particular game, Ibarra said, quote, "Players have no patience. They want new stuff every day, every hour. We're trying to react to that while holding the Blizzard quality bar high." And when asked about live service models, he said, quote, "We know players want new content literally almost every single day. And at the same time, it takes large teams to be able to deliver that. So you have to monetize it in the right ways. At the same time, I always tell the teams, when someone spends $1 or a penny with Blizzard, I want them to feel good after they do that. How do we get to a world where we know that's always going to be the basis of what we're doing?" So some players, Diablo 4 players in particular, interpret it Ibarra's first comments about players having no patience as being in reference to Diablo 4, and they're rebutting, no, we're not complaining about lack of content, we're complaining about releasing the game too early, about some fundamental things that should have been addressed before launch. And I think two separate issues are being conflated here. Both of those things can be true. I don't think that's what Ibarra was talking about specifically, because it is true that, yes, we do burn through content very quickly, and we always want new content. That's separate from, well, the game should be in a good state, period. Even once the game is in a good state, we still want a continuous churn of new content. Especially some gamers have absolutely voracious appetites. They're going to play for hours a day, every day. They're going to burn through a whole season's content in a couple of days, a week max, and then say this game has no content after having just spent 20 hours on the game. Then in other Blizzard news, the Overwatch League is officially dead. Again. How many times have we officially declared it dead now? Activision Blizzard has stated that they are transitioning away from the Overwatch League as their competitive esports Overwatch model. They said that competitive Overwatch may return, but not in its current form. It's a shame. The Overwatch League was something incredibly ambitious. Blizzard was effectively trying to build up an esports scene in North America to rival real sports. Yes, there has been esports in North America, but it's not been as big as in Europe and nowhere close to as big as in South Korea. Blizzard threw tons of money at this to try to make this happen. And it was all announced in 2016. You would have city-based teams. These cities would have their own stadiums. They really wanted to make it a real-life spectacle, just like a real sport. To buy a team in this league needed $20 million. There were huge sponsors, huge amounts of money being thrown into this. And then what happens? COVID. Now you can't do the live spectator thing. Now it's all online, and now that it's all online, well, how is this really any different from all the other esports events out there? One of the hugest draws, one of the hugest selling points was to have these real life stadiums, these real life events. Now, of course, that's not the only reason why it failed, but I do think that that was a major contributing factor. Of course, if there weren't all the other issues, if it could still stand just as an amazing viewing sport by itself and Overwatch was continued to be an amazingly popular game, yeah, maybe it would have survived. But even at that, it was just so much money. And then when Blizzard's relationship with China soured and China backed out with all of its money, it was a nail in the coffin. But the official statement from Blizzard is we are transitioning from the Overwatch League and evolving competitive Overwatch in a new direction. Then, in some quick GTA news, 10 years after the launch of GTA 5, we now have news that we're going to get the trailer for the next Grand Theft Auto game in early December. That is from the horse's mouth. They did not call it GTA 6, it's probably going to be GTA 6. But I turn the question to you folks, what do you think it'll be? GTA 6 or something else? Sound off in the comments. Then lastly, in some World of Warcraft news. The biggest announcement of BlizzCon was 3 expansions revealed for World of Warcraft. The World Soul Saga. But this led to some questions like, well, what's going to be the pace of release of these expansions? Are they going to be the same size as other WoW expansions? Are they going to be smaller? Well, it's been confirmed via interviews that these expansions will release at a faster pace. So typically the release cadence is once every 2 years. So faster pace releases, but same amount of content. They are not going to be smaller expansions. In an interview with Forbes, game director Ian Hazzikostas said, quote, "I will say very clearly this is not a shrinkflation ploy. There are not fewer chips in the bag. An expansion is an expansion. War Within has 4 zones, 8 dungeons, a raid, new levels, etc. We're not going to talk in detail about Midnight or Last Titan, but I can tell you Midnight has 4 zones, 8 dungeons, right? That's what an expansion is, and that's not something we're trying to redefine here." Then lastly, now this is alleged, can't verify it, but someone on Reddit said that during BlizzCon, he spoke to Christy Golden, a lead writer on the WoW team, and she expressed that the cinematic that we saw between Thrall and Anduin, that was all Metzen's idea. Normally, Christy Golden is the one who writes the cinematics and the in-game cutscenes, but this one was 100% Metzen's writing. The Redditor named MKPMDB goes on to say that he had a chat with a producer and that for the cinematic, instead of using motion capture, they just had the actors act out the scenes just for reference purposes and everything was hand animated, which is absolutely incredible given the detail and the facial expressions. I mean, the Blizzard Cinematics team has been for decades best in class, and this just continues to show they have not given up that throne. And Blizzard, please, when you gonna make a full CGI movie or series? I know you had a falling out with Netflix. That's water under the bridge now, right? That was Activision. Screw those guys. Make it happen, Captain. Mikey Barra, come on. And that's gonna wrap up this week's video. But again, do be sure to have got caught up on my BlizzCon coverage. If you haven't seen what it looked like inside on the show floor, how they dressed up the Diablo area, it was really cool. Got some footage for you. Check that out. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.